Hello, and a warm welcome to Chatsworth. There's been a house on this site for well over 500 years, and I wanted to introduce you to a series of episodes which have been arranged with the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art. Chatsworth House, Garden and Park have been looked after by the Chatsworth House Trust, a not-for-profit organisation set up by my father in 1981. The Chatsworth House Trust exists for the long-term benefit of the public, but it also pays for the conservation and maintenance of the house, the garden and the collection, and so it has an important role to play at Chatsworth. There have been about 16 generations of my family living at Chatsworth over the centuries, and inevitably many of them have made considerable changes, some more than others. Change is part of Chatsworth, as it is part of all historic monuments, but we really embrace it and relish it. We love new things, and it's always worth remembering that practically everything here was brand new once. The paint was wet on most of the pictures when they first arrived. So I'm now going to hand you over to Alice Martin and Alex Hodby, who will introduce you to the house and the contents and tell you some of the stories associated with Chatsworth.
Hello, I'm Alice Martin. I'm the head of the Devonshire Collection.
And I'm Alex Hodby. I'm Senior Curator of Programme.
And together we're going to take you through over 500 years of history of the building of this amazing house that is Chatsworth.
And we're not only going to tell you about the building, we're also going to show you some of the architectural treasures in our collection and some of the material that tells us about the history of the building, its stories and the people who've lived here.
So any story of Chatsworth and the Cavendish family really begins with Elizabeth Hardwicke, known as Bess of Hardwicke. Born into a family of respectable but very cash-strapped Derbyshire landowners, she eventually married and would outlive 4 husbands and have 6 surviving children.
And it was her second husband, who was William Cavendish, that Bess persuaded to settle in Derbyshire, and they bought this area of land, and it was their children, so Bess and William's children, who had become the Earls and later the Dukes of Devonshire. So the line of the Cavendish family continues from them until now.
Bess's significance really cannot be underestimated. Her 4th husband, George Talbot, Earl of Shrewsbury, was actually the jailer of Mary Queen of Scots in this country, something that literally would have bankrupted all but the wealthiest of people. And the breakdown of their marriage, which is actually linked to that, leads to some of the most fascinating objects in our collection.
This is the Hunting Tower. It functions really as an anchor point for us in the landscape. It has spectacular views down the valley, the River Derwent, the parkland and the house beneath. And it appears time and again in paintings and engravings and drawings, and we can often orientate ourselves against it.
The interesting thing is it's that sort of survival from the Tudor landscape. So created in 1582, we think for Bess of Hardwicke, most likely designed and built by Robert Smithson. The fact that it's still in the landscape is so interesting.
Yes, it's so interesting, and I think that's because not only does it function as a hunting tower, so that would have been its purpose when it was built, but in centuries after, it also functions as a folly and as a viewpoint, so it satisfies the needs of designers such as Capability Brown, who otherwise may have swept it away in his great landscape designs.
So here we are at Queen Mary's Bower, and this structure from 1617, Alex, what would have been its original purpose?
Well, it would have stood within a network of ponds, so it could have been a fishing platform for those ponds, it could have been a viewing platform from which to see those water landscapes.
Yeah, and the pleasure gardens, of course, that were all around it in Elizabethan times.
That's right, or it could have been a site for a banqueting house, but we don't really know is the honest answer to that.
I think it's really interesting that this has actually survived when so much around it has disappeared.
Yes, and of course there are elements of this structure that have been remade. It's probably not as it would have appeared completely like this in Tudor times.
So Alex, it's so lovely to be this close to this amazing work of embroidery. What have we got here?
So this shows us
the Tudor Chatsworth. It was made right at the end of the 1500s, possibly by Bess of Hardwick herself or one of the members of her household, and it's needlework on linen. And what's remarkable about this is that it shows us this very fortified looking house. It looks very strong and robust. It's got lots of stories, which is quite atypical for the time to have so much height in the building. But what I love about this are all the little details that we can get into. So even though this structure looks so strong, we have this main entrance into the house, which takes us into this inner courtyard, and we've got this lovely fountain here. And then around the house, we've got lots of things which tell us about the family and the environment. So at the top and bottom of the border, we've got the Hardwick coat of arms. On the house itself in the centre, we have the Cavendish coat of arms. The chimneys, which have these curls of smoke coming from them, a really lovely sun beaming out right in the centre, and then hints of nature and the natural world around the property. So we've got bees and butterflies, and then hints of the landscape and flowers beyond the house at either side. And then the border is intertwined snakes, another symbol of the Cavendish family.
I think it is just extraordinary and so lovely to be this close to it, because you really get to see that detail. I think incredible that in all these sort of 57 kind of lattice windows, whoever has done it has actually used sort of blue silk to create that idea of windows. To think that actually someone who possibly lived in this house created this gives you that sense that you're really looking at something that would have had the feel of the house at that period. So I think this is one of my sort of favourite pieces relating to the Tudor period. So this was found on the West Terrace, wasn't it?
That's right. It was found in the West Terrace in archaeological investigations, and it's a piece of terracotta, and it has on it the cipher of William and Elizabeth Cavendish. So it's got a W, an E and a C intertwined, showing the kind of the unification of those houses. We know that they bought this area of land in 1549, and not long afterwards we know that they started to build here.
We know there was sort of several iterations of the house, so we don't know exactly which one it's from. So William Cavendish died in 1557, so it's quite a short window, unless they actually brought it from a previous house. So quite intriguing, but lovely to see their two names together like that. So one of the most fascinating aspects of Tudor history that we have in the archive here at Chatsworth is Bess of Hardwick's will. And this really is an extraordinary piece of archival evidence of the period. So she died in 1608, and we have here a 2-page large will of all of the contents of her many properties, and really fascinatingly attached to this is a 1601 inventory, which includes really detailed information of Chatsworth. So it gives us room names, some of the contents, so really gives us sort of a glimpse into Tudor Chatsworth.
We get enshrined in this document not only that very helpful list, but also we have lots of changes as well. So we've got these amendments that happen through the will.
Yeah, and they show, you know, the fact that this was such a wealthy and far-ranging family. Bess was very well known for arranging very advantageous marriages for her many children. That you sort of see their changing fortunes as well. So people are written out. We see who's the favourite. And the fact that it is on vellum obviously has meant it's survived so well.
And I love this huge seal at the bottom with her stamp, which we think is the coat of arms of Hardwick. So it just is the most incredibly, still quite alive document.
Yes, and so important, because obviously we have so little from that period.
What we're looking at here is a really interesting volume which records the properties of the family. And this particular page, made in 1617, records the land at Chatsworth.
So it gives us an idea of just the sort of scale of the sort of the land, the gardens and the house around Chatsworth.
And of course, the hunting tower, they're very prominently in this survey, even bigger than the house actually appears in this map.
Perspective may not have been all it should be. Yes.
We've got the ponds here, we've got the River Derwent running all the way through along the valley. The house and its immediate buildings around it, so the service buildings, the stables and so on. The sense that there's more of a garden here, and then the kind of landscape beyond that.
And it's just so beautiful, obviously on vellum, highly coloured, absolutely sort of stunning. There's 65 actual maps of different land areas in here.
But also, of course, as you said, it's a very important document recording ownership.
It's a legal document, isn't it?
It's a legal document. It's kind of indicating to us ownership.
So what we have here is a view of the west front of Chatsworth, and this is by the artist Richard Wilson. And although it's painted in the mid-18th century, it's actually depicting a far earlier period of the house's development. And it was actually made from a draft of a much earlier painting by Jan Sibirax, showing a period of the house that when it was in real transition between the Tudor and the modern Chatsworth.
Yes, and we know that that date must be between 1676 and 86, because it's in that moment the third Earl changes the windows of Tudor Chatsworth to be more contemporary sash windows. So it's part of this beginning to change the Tudor house. And you can see other changes taking place as well in the garden and the wider landscape. And of course, on the hill, we still have the Tudor-built hunting tower, which remains as the pinpoint in the landscape that we can always orientate ourselves against.
So Alex, this 1699 view of Chatsworth by Kip and Niff is probably one of the few views we'll have back into that sort of transition period between the Tudor Chatsworth and the modern coming Chatsworth that we know better today. And I think what I find so fascinating is I can recognise bits, but then there's bits that just look so strange, so sort of fanciful.
Yes, so the house we can tell is the house as it is today on the same footprint. But what we have here on the west front is the remaining Tudor facade, which is in brick and terracotta, contrasting very much with what comes afterwards. And also in the landscape, there are other elements which we still have today. So here is Queen Mary's Bower. And then on the hill, we also have the hunting tower. And it's in this very wild part of the landscape that we can see on the edge of this engraving.
It is strange, isn't it? I mean, there's things I recognise like sort of Flora's Temple as well, but they're in entirely the wrong place. So this is still an ever-changing landscape. So we've still, the Tudor pleasure gardens that we've read about have all disappeared. And actually we've still got some of the water gardens, but it's starting to be replaced by these kind of European formal gardens. And that makes me think, several years ago here, we actually had the drought and all of these kind of formal plantings started to reappear.
Yes.
So it just really talks to that kind of layering of histories which sit on this site. So join us in the next episode when we will see the birth of the 18th century powerhouse as modern Chatsworth subsumes the Tudor house and clothes itself in the English Baroque.
And along with that, we'll meet a host of characters such as William Talman, Archer, Cibber, and their patron, who was the first Duke, sometimes described as the architect of a new Chatsworth.